Welcome to the Reconnection Club podcast, the show that helps parents heal troubled relationships with their adult sons and daughters. I'm your host, psychotherapist Tina Gilbertson. Each week, I'll offer you compassion, clarity, and personal development tips designed to help you reconnect, not only with your child, but with yourself. Now let's get started. When it comes to our innate ability to communicate, most of us are, by definition, average. We're crowded into that fat part of the bell curve, which means we're pretty much in the same boat when it comes to learning how to communicate with other humans. And here's how it usually goes. The very first communication skills we acquire typically come from our parents or the people who raise us. The way they talk to us and to others, the way they behave toward us and toward others, gives us our earliest impressions of what communication looks, sounds, and feels like. By the time we're in adulthood, we've internalized our parents' early communication styles and also any extra skills we might have picked up in our wanderings. As we go through life, we tend to add to our communication skills. We normally evolve, grow, and elaborate on our abilities rather than degenerate and lose useful knowledge over time. But when it comes to communication, if we don't actively improve on the knowledge we acquired from our parents and other adults, then of course, as adults, we only have the skills we learned in our youth. And our skills today will match not those of our parents today, but the level that our parents' skills were at when we were learning from them. If, as a parent yourself, your communication skills were less advanced when your child was growing up than they are now, your child may still be operating at that earlier stage that you have left behind. If she hasn't added to her communication toolbox since childhood, then your adult child is still where you and the other adults in the household were all those years ago. But if her skills haven't evolved, all is not lost. People can learn to communicate better at any age. You may have done substantial work on communication yourself, and if so, you know this to be true. We can continue learning and improving our skills as adults. It's not always comfortable or easy, but it can be done. So if you'd like your adult child to be able to communicate better with you, first, remember what your own skills were like at that earlier stage of your development. And once again, I'm assuming that both you and your child fall within the wide range of average. If your child has neurological issues, such as a speech or language disorder, this obviously won't apply. But let's assume that your child's communication skills are still where yours and other adults were when he was young and learning about communication from the people in your household. Do you remember what the communication was like in the home in those days? What did you need subsequently in order to get better at communicating effectively? In other words, how did you get to where you are today? Knowing the path you took to improve your own communication skills may help you not only find compassion for your child's current limitations, but also to identify problems and model better communication from your new improved toolkit. Of course, it's always frustrating to be on the receiving end of poor communication. I'm not suggesting that just recognizing your child's lack of skill will give you endless patience or remove the frustration and longing you may feel for more and better conversation with them. But whether or not estrangement is part of the picture, the best anyone can really do to improve a bad communication situation is to model the behaviors we'd like to see every chance we get. For example, if you would appreciate clear and calm communication from your child, show her how that's done by communicating clearly and calmly with her every time you get the chance. When you start to think about modeling good communication, if you're like me, you might become aware of areas for improvement yourself. It's always easier to notice other people's deficits than it is to be aware of our own. But because you might be asked in return for the very skills you're requesting from your adult child, it's important to address any growing edges in your communication style. Thanks to the internet, training in how to communicate better is available to anyone willing to invest some time. And there are many options out there. For instance, my local library gives me access to an online learning platform where there are literally dozens of courses I can take on interpersonal communication. It's all free and accessible with just a library card. So, if your estranged adult child seems to be lacking communication skills, here are some things you can do in response. First, remember that in addition to the other influences in her childhood, your child also observed a younger version of you. And how you communicated with your child and other people back then was part of her education. So think about what it took in the interim for you to boost your skills. What did you need? How did you do it? Second, identify specific communication problems your child may be exhibiting, and then think about possible solutions to those problems. For example, if your child shuts down when she's upset instead of telling you what's wrong, you might choose to think of that behavior as losing her words. Now, that's just one possibility. It's not the only one. But if you think of it that way, what's a possible solution when someone loses their words? Well, you might have to provide some words for her. Therapists do this all the time with clients who don't have a well-developed vocabulary of feeling words if they're not expressing their feelings. We might say, "Whoa, that sounds scary," or "I wonder if you felt betrayed when he said that," and so on. We provide options, and the client chooses the ones that feel like a good fit. So identify the communication problem and think about what might be a solution. And by the way, part of seeking solutions may simply be to ask yourself, is there anything you can acknowledge to your child that can help remove any shame or stigma around this problem while gently identifying it as a problem? For example, could you say, "I didn't always encourage you to express yourself as a child," or "I often had trouble expressing myself when you were a child," or "I know your mother and I raised our voices a lot when you were growing up," which probably gave you the impression that yelling was a good way to get a point across. The idea of acknowledgments like this is not to grovel, it's simply to accept some accountability for communication problems your child learned from the adults in the home. It's his responsibility now to repair any faulty learning, but first he must recognize it as faulty, and your acknowledgement can help with that. Once you've identified problems and solutions, model the behaviors you'd like to see from your child. Modeling shows people what's possible and provides them with better options. I can't say enough about the importance of modeling in all sorts of areas, but parenting presents an obvious modeling opportunity that can continue for a lifetime. Lastly, again, if you need to, bone up on your own communication skills to make sure they're up to the standards you're setting for your child. And if you're not sure where to start, check out your local library. Once again, very briefly, here are 4 things you can do if your adult child's communication is lacking. 1, remember your younger self and your own communication journey. 2, identify specific problems and possible solutions. 3, model the behaviors you'd like your child to adopt. And 4, if needed, seek education to enhance your own communication abilities. Estrangement is, at bottom, a communication problem. If your adult child is struggling, there may be more you can do to help than you realize. Be gentle with your child and with yourself, but don't be satisfied with poor communication. Your interpersonal style is part of the estrangement picture too, and that's very good news because it means you do have a real influence on how things unfold when the two of you communicate. Any efforts you make in this area will have a positive impact you can both benefit from. Until next time, remember that you are a loving, lovable, and still growing human being. So please take good care of yourself. Bye for now. If you've enjoyed this episode of the Reconnection Club podcast, I invite you to check out reconnectionclub.com. The Reconnection Club is for parents at any stage of estrangement from their adult, child, or children. So whether you've just realized there's trouble between you, you've been living with estrangement for years, or you're newly reconciled but still walking on eggshells, the Reconnection Club is your essential resource for information, support, and continued personal growth. With our courses and workshops, expert interviews, monthly Q&A calls, and a friendly, active community, the Reconnection Club is a wonderful place to be for anyone suffering the pain of estrangement from an adult, child, or children. So check it out at reconnectionclub.com.